want to welcome everyone again. We are going to be focusing on content creation with Microsoft Copilot. I will be focusing on the premium experience. So there is that additional license that is required for some of the things that we're doing. But if you have a question on what's available to different experiences, just let me know and I'd be happy to clarify any of those topics for you. My name is Larissa. I am on our Evolve 365 team here at Planet. And so I get to spend my time working with different organizations that are implementing new technologies. And I've spent most of my time for the past couple of years working as AI has become a bigger and bigger deal and seeing how that actually affects our workflows and the different approaches that we're learning are really beneficial. So I'm happy to share any of that experience or any of those stories with you. If you have questions today, this really is all about trying to give you the most benefit that I can. So please let me know. Happy to focus on any of those key pieces that you're interested in. So our focus today, I'm going to do just a quick overview of Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. We'll make sure that you have those foundational elements so that as we go along today, you know where you can try these things out. Feel free to follow along as well. Would be happy to see how those responses are coming through for you and what differences you're seeing in there. And then we're going to get into the actual content creation. There are a ton of different ways we can approach this, especially with that extra license. And at the end, we'll close out with some effective prompting tips just to help make sure that you have all of those keys to get the best results with these new tools. So before I get started, I do just want to get a quick idea. How comfortable are all of you with Microsoft 365? Copilot specifically. I know for some people we hear it talked about quite a bit, but we haven't had that opportunity to really explore it. Some of us have used similar tools. There's no wrong answer, but it definitely helps me as we go through our conversation today to have that understanding of what you've been able to test and try and where on that journey you are. So if you could put those answers in the chat, a simple letter will do, but if you want to add more context around that, clarify anything, please do. That is always helpful for me. So that being said, I'll actually add this here to the chat really quick for you. Oh, an A plus. I like that. That's a good combination of things. I don't have a license, but I've seen some of the benefits from coworkers. So that feels like a really fair place to be. I appreciate that. All right. Well, I will go ahead and kind of start going on. For those of you who haven't responded yet, I would love to see where you're at as well. But it sounds like some of us do have a fair amount of experience. We've dipped our toes in the water. So hopefully we can give you some good ideas moving forward. Before we go into anything, we are focusing on Copilot today, but in general, there are so many different AI powered tools, and a lot of them have similar or overlapping benefits. So they can do things like efficiently summarize really long things, help you get to the key points, or create new documentation, new content. There are some really cool tools out there, but it's just really important to make sure that when you're thinking about a professional environment, we do need to make sure that we're using approved AI web services because some of the innate way that these tools are built can potentially expose personal or confidential data when they're not approved and when they're in that more public capacity. So the good news is Copilot, in any regard, whether you have that premium license or not, will protect your data when you're signed in with your organization's credentials. So you don't have to worry about training the tools. You don't have to worry about your data leaving the secure environment that you're already in. So one of the added benefits of getting to use that here. There are a lot of security commitments that Microsoft makes with this tool. So for those of us that are in that typical enterprise or commercial cloud, if you don't know the official name for it, that's okay. But when we're in that Microsoft environment, we get that enterprise data protection, which you can see with the little shield icon when we're chatting. It's usually a green shield with a check mark inside of it. And this just means that you're in a protected conversation or experience. So Microsoft goes through a lot to make sure that you can use some of those more popular tools within the security of where you're at to make sure that you can leverage it for some of those places that can really make a difference. So one of the big things that I do just want to emphasize when it comes to Copilot chat is it is a very different way of working. I think a lot of us have different workflows that are pretty cemented into our habits or just the automatic way we approach things, even down to when we used to go to our favorite web browser and try to condense those really big thoughts into a couple of words so that we could find the most relevant results and progress from there. The big difference with Copilot is that it completely changes that approach and actually benefits from you sharing more relevant information. So rather than taking those thoughts and trying to bring them down into as few words as possible, we want to make sure we're offering as much information as we can to help the context of the task we're giving Copilot in this instance. So it allows us to do things like search across our internal data. There are a lot of times where we have a conversation that starts in an email that turns into a meeting that's followed up on in Teams messages. And so you have different data points in all of these different areas, and it can be really hard to keep track of. So Copilot helps bridge that gap, and you can ask questions that allow it to reach into all of this other data and pull all of that together so you have the full picture. So I really want to frame this as Copilot being a collaborative and drafting partner. When we're creating different things, we are often having different stages. So there is the initial drafting portion, there's the reviewing portion, and then there's the communicating all of that out, what we're trying to share with others. So what we'll start with today is seeing how Copilot can help you when you either don't know where to start or you have a lot of things and you need to kind of distill that first draft really quickly. Sometimes it's also really helpful if you're looking for ideas to expand on, if you want a second opinion on how the structure is put together. So if you take nothing else away today, I hope it's that there's probably additional uses to Copilot that you might not automatically assume. So I encourage you to expand out the opportunities that you'll have and try to use it in a slightly different way. The other thing too is that you are going to stay in control. So whether or not you're in a chat or whether we're working directly in one of our applications like Word or PowerPoint, you do always stay in control of what actually gets added to that document. You get to make sure it aligns correctly and accurately with something that you feel comfortable putting your name on. So you get to decide what's used, and if it's not beneficial, you can get rid of it. Now, for anyone that is relatively new, I think most of us have explored a little bit, but we can find Copilot in a number of different places. The initial place that I'll start out today is in the web browser. You can go to office.com and just make sure you log in with your organization's credentials as you get in. And we should be able to then leverage Copilot chat there. If you have that license activated, I know a couple of you have mentioned you just got approval or you just got it activated. So sometimes it takes a minute to show up in our applications once that happens. But after that kicks in, you'll actually start to see Copilot features show up in those applications as well. And they'll take on kind of a fun personality in each of them to help maximize that specific tool. All right, so I'm actually going to jump into my demo environment just to make sure that you can kind of see what we're talking about here. So I'm going to open up my Edge browser and I'm starting out in that Microsoft 365 home area. This is usually what it looks like. And I will say there have been a number of navigational and user interface changes that have happened recently. So if yours looks slightly different, feel free to ask questions and clarify. But I want to point out a few key features so that you know where to find them and that they exist as well. So starting out, I want to point out that I am currently in the new design of the Copilot chat experience. So I will toggle that off here in a moment so you can see the difference. But in this new design, it's a simplified version of chatting, and it should make it a little bit faster to load and help answer those questions. But here in the middle is where we're going to see our main prompting text box. Underneath is where we're going to see some different topics of what we can get inspiration for. So if you know that you're looking for insights on files, there might be some prompts in this option to get you started. With the new design, the new chat option did move over here to the left-hand side. So this is something I do recommend anytime you're changing topics. All of your conversations are contextual. So Copilot is going to try to bring those different ideas and topics together. So anytime you're switching topics, I recommend starting a new chat to make sure you're not unintentionally mixing different ideas or projects together. The other thing that is slightly different phrasing is this work IQ option. So for those of you who are new to it, this won't be a change. This will be, I believe, still a toggle. You can choose between what you prefer your experience to be right now. But work IQ means right now, if I talk to Copilot, it is allowed to reach into my Microsoft environment and pull in relevant information. So let's say I type in here and I say, hey, give me the updates on this particular project. Because I have this work IQ turned on, which it is by default, it's going to likely search my emails, my Teams chats, my OneDrive files, and try to bring back anything that's relevant to answer my question. It's phrased a little differently in the other experience. This auto option is a place where you can customize, if you know that you need to, how the version of Copilot that you're getting, essentially. So I'm going to quickly click on this drop down. It's usually on auto. That's really helpful. And then if you want to change that for specific conversations, you can. Quick response just means it's going to respond as fast as it can, but Think Deeper allows it to question its assumptions, ask you questions back, and it usually takes a little bit longer for us to get that feedback. Often worth it, but something to be aware of between these two. And then you likely can also see some different development tools that you can use on the back end if you know that you have a preferred experience and you want to optimize the output specific to that. So you have some control over that as well. Now, I neglected to show you the most important thing that you do when you first get here, which is down here at the bottom, you should see your profile icon. This is where we want to check first to make sure that we're logged in, not with a personal account. So if I click on this, you can verify that email. And then up here in the right-hand corner, you should see that shield with a check mark, which says, hey, you have enterprise data protection, so you can attach those different proprietary files and things like that. This option over here with the dotted line on that chat means it's a temporary chat, so it's not going to show up in your chat history, and it's also not going to be used in Copilot memory to be referenced again in the future. Now, I mentioned something that I think a lot of people don't realize is here. So up here in the top right corner, I have a 3-dot menu, and that is our settings and different things like that. There's a number of things we can do here, but I want to focus on this settings option. This should give you a pop-up, and the third choice on the left navigation is personalization. I absolutely recommend coming in here when you're first getting set up because you can do things like custom instructions, which is something that Copilot's going to always consider every single time that you have a new conversation with it. So these are perpetual things you want Copilot to know about you, preferences on your writing style, things about your role that you want it to be aware of. And every single time you chat with it, it should follow those instructions first and then look at what your new prompt is. This is also where you can see what kind of work data it's associating with your profile. So you can see things like what it has access to here. And saved memories. This is something that you can manage, but you don't necessarily have to go in and add to. This is where Copilot's going to make some inferences based off of your conversations and say, this might be an important detail for me to remember later on. So it can be beneficial to come in here and see what kinds of things might get saved over time. And if you do have something you want it to remember, you can tell it, hey, please save this. I personally tend to lean into the custom instructions, but there's benefit to both. All right. So the last thing I want to point out is in this new design, you are going to see this 3-dot menu, which is now called the Prompt Lab. In the other design experience, it is called Prompt Gallery. They're similar results, but formatted a little differently, phrased a little differently. So you can filter this by the topic. You can save and share prompts so that you can use them over and over again and narrow them down as you need to. So without spending too much time, I am going to toggle this new experience off and let's, hopefully it just does that for me. The big differences I'll point out are this work and web toggle here at the top. If we were to cross out that work IQ, it's the same as switching over to web. You're still protected in your conversation. It's just saying don't pull from anything internal, please. And so it's going to base its answers off of anything that is online that it can reach or off of its foundational data. There are times when I want to explore options or do research outside of what I already have or double check assumptions I might be making. And so I turn that work option off so that it doesn't pull incorrect information that I might have stored and I'm pulling from, other verified sources. And then in this previous design as well, that auto option's still here. It's just on the other side. And there is a new chat option right next to it. The drop down is where you're going to find the temporary chat. So various features have moved, but the vast majority of it should operate very much the same. It's just whichever you prefer. All right, so before we get into creating anything, I want to emphasize how easy this is because especially if you're new to doing any of this, it's as easy as just starting to talk. The best thing you can do to level up your AI experiences is to work with them. See what happens, see what works, see what doesn't work. So we just start chatting. We can say things like, hey, summarize this document, and then come back and say, actually, I want you to reformat that. Give me these details. And it should be that easy to get going. So let's actually go ahead and do that together. I'll come back over here and we're going to start out. I'm going to do a very simple one. I encourage you to do this with me if you do have that premium experience activated. When we're referencing internal documentation, there's 2 ways we can get to that. This little plus icon is going to let you add work content a little bit more manually, or you can upload from your device. Or while we're typing and putting in our prompt, we can hit that / and it should bring up a quick search of your internal data. For those of you who don't like typing out, especially when you're trying to get a big thought out, you do have some options to have a voice chat and have Copilot talk back to you, or use this dictation so that you can speak your prompt before sending it rather than having to type all of it out. So I'm going to come in here and click add work content, and you should be able to search through here. The search experience is a little different on the old design, but we're going to come in here and I'm going to look for, let's see if it pulls it up the same way. We can also reference specific people, although that functions just a little bit differently. But let's just say, give me an update on anything. Oops, that's the search. That's not going to help us, friends. All right. Give me an update on our Mark 8 project. Categorize your response. And we're going to have it by emails, chats, and documents. You can change that up. You can include meetings, anything like that. And it is not functioning as I would expect. So let me actually switch to this other experience here. That is also one of the fun things with Copilot. Every once in a while, you'll get kind of an odd, you didn't expect it response. So let's see this. I'm going to switch to the simplified design. I've toggled on and off a little bit today, so that could have something to do with it. And let's try this again. All right. Give me updates. Oh, I know why. I was showing you all, I turned off the work capability. That's what happened. It was not the new design. So that is what happens when you turn that off. Don't forget to turn it back on when you want it to come back up. All right, so we're going to try this instead. All right, give me the latest from, and we're just going to look up Sophia here. So that / allowed me a lot more options. It didn't do that when I was in the web because I was saying don't access that. You can also try and filter this down by, hey, I know I'm going to reference an actual person in my organization, or I'm looking at a specific file. If you record your meetings, those are a phenomenal resource. And so you can actually reference the meetings as well as all of the information that was shared in the agenda and documents that were attached to that meeting. So you have a ton of different choices here. Let's just go ahead and see what's recent from Sophia, just to see how it pulls across that. And again, if you have this option, make sure you're on that work toggle and just put someone in there to start seeing how it can kind of pull that through. So I didn't tell it quite how to format that. This was a very simple prompt, but I said, hey, this is what I want. And it said, okay, well, in your Teams messages, this was the last one. Here are your most recent emails. And notice that I have hyperlinks for all of these references. So it's not asking me to trust its word. It's saying, this is what I have, but if you'd like to look at it, here's a link directly to it. So after your different responses, it's going to tell you where it pulled that information. And if for some reason it doesn't, you can just say, hey, please cite your sources. So I'm now seeing this broken up into different categories that Copilot thought would be beneficial. It's even giving me a bottom line up front here so that I can review that. If you have a ton of sources that are being shown, those are going to be listed down here, and you can see all of the different sources that it pulled from. I do want to emphasize that it is your responsibility to verify and validate everything that Copilot produces, especially if you're moving in a direction or when we're talking about content creation like we are today. You want to make sure that you're comfortable signing off on that. So it is for you to kind of go through and review those sources or be familiar enough with the information to ensure that it's all accurate. So that is just an idea of how we can get started. And I am going to start a new chat, and we're going to kind of paint a scenario here. So I just had a meeting, and I'm going to need to update and follow through on some of the things that we talked about in that meeting. So I'm going to attach a meeting transcript. If you hit that / and you have that meeting that was recorded, great. If you don't and you just have the transcript or you have meeting notes, you can also use those as documentation here. So I'm going to use this one right here, and I want this to be presented as an executive-friendly summary. So pretty quickly here, it was like, hey, this is what I referenced. I attached it. Yes, it does have access to your internal information, but when we don't actively direct it to the right documentation, it can pull back things that you didn't expect, irrelevant things, outdated elements. So there is a major benefit to intentionally adding in those resources. So as we come down here, I wanted it to be executive friendly. So it gave me that bottom line up front and top 5 key decisions here, key risks, unresolved questions, and our next steps. If all I needed was that information, I can move forward, but we're talking about creating content. So I want to highlight this option here, which is that little pencil icon at the very end of your response. That is going to give you the option to take everything Copilot just responded with and turn it into a page. This then becomes part of the resources that you can use moving forward. It's something you can reference in your chats, and you absolutely can collaborate with these. Just like your other tools, you can co-author in here. It is going to pull everything from that response, so I might remove the conversational elements, but this is currently a private page that I can work with. I can modify. I can say, well, that was almost correct. Let me just fix this word, change this formatting, etc. There's so much you can do with pages, and I would take our whole time talking about it if I went into it. So I highly recommend exploring this. That / will give you a ton of different pre-formatted options to include in this page. But when you want to collaborate, maybe you want to get feedback and say, hey, can everyone come in and verify that these notes are correct, add anything that was missed? Maybe you want people to vote on different project options. You can include them on this page. So there is that normal share icon up in the top right corner. And if you copy as a component, it will actually take that entire page and turn it into a little window we can send to our colleagues. So you still have control over who is going to have access. So if you need to limit that depending on the sensitivity scale that you're working in, you can. All of those options are still there. I did not copy that link, so that was not helpful. Let's go ahead and hit settings. And just for simplicity of this demonstration, I'm going to apply that and it will copy my link. So for example, if I come into a Teams conversation now, I can send this update to one of my team members who might actually be the one executing this follow-up. So let's come in here and we'll just start a new conversation with Sophia. Type her name in here, and really what I want to show is that when I just do that paste action, whether you right click or do Control V, it will pull up that loop component. And I now get a quick insight. Let's make this just a little bit bigger into that page that I have. This is very immediate syncing, and it should be very up to date. So once I send this off, Sophia can come into this chat and actually get into the page itself without ever leaving the Teams conversation. So you can see in here as well that I'm actually active in this in 2 different places, which is why I have that cursor up here. And as other people join, you would see them show up at the top as well. So you get all of that visibility. Then at any point, if you want to take this and turn it into a document or a longer term, different formatting, anything like that, this 3-dot menu should allow you to export and make a document or a PDF. You also have version history as well. So I know sometimes that's a concern when you're live collaborating with people. You do have that version history protecting anything that might accidentally be removed or changed. All right, so when you save those, it did give me an automatic title. It tells me this title in the chat. These are going to be saved to your library. So if I go to the library on the left-hand side, I should see the different pages I've created over time. They're in chronological order. You can also search them, but they are based on title. So it's not going to search all of the content. It will only search the title. So if you do need to rename those titles, please do, to make it easier on yourself as you get an increasing number of pages in here. All right, I want to pause right there. Does anyone have any questions so far before we continue on this idea of summarizing and creating follow-ups? All right, I'll take that as a good sign. The next thing that we're going to do is realistically, we don't usually do one thing with this information. So I got this initial takeaway for executive friendly follow up, but maybe I need to update our stakeholders as well. It's the same conversation and the same original data, but I need to change the formatting and what we're pulling together. So now I'm looking for a stakeholder update, and I'm going to be sending it as an email, and I'm going to use that professional tone, highlight any of those key decisions, risks, and so forth. So some elements overlap, but it's a different audience. Because it's going to be an email, it did give me, hey, here's a subject, and put this into more of that email formatting. But I don't always want to copy and paste. So I'm going to jump into Outlook here, and this will be our first view as to how this is going to show up in our applications. Copilot shows up in the home ribbon actually it should show up everywhere now, on the far right-hand side. So if you hover over it, you'll get some different choices. And if you click on it, it will open up the full chat experience. This one does usually reflect the work and web toggle in case you are on that new experience. But the nice thing is you get your chat history when you do this. So I could jump here into Outlook, and this was that conversation we were just having. So I'm going to click on that. I should be able to see everything we just talked about. And what I can do at this point is right above my prompt text area, there's a default mode. Default mode means it's not going to make changes for me right now. So if I click on this and I say, hey, please allow actions, I will note this is currently a Frontier feature. So if that is in any way restricted in your environment, that might not show up right now, but it should be coming. This will allow it to actually create that draft for me. So I'm going to say create this draft. We'll send this off. And then ideally, what I'm hoping will come back is a notice that it created the draft for me, and all I have to do is go in, read through it, and approve and send. I theoretically have already read through this up here because I should have looked at it before moving forward. So hopefully these are all things that are happening in real time and you're checking it as you go. So while it's thinking about this, I want to kind of paint the picture for the next piece. So we've told our executive leadership, we've now started to write this draft for our stakeholders, and we need to tell our team as well. And so we're going to make a Teams announcement. Third audience that we're adding in here, we're going to do that as well. So it did create an email draft for me. So if I come over to our options, let's see if it gave that to me. And it says Contoso project over here, post launch. And here is that draft that we just discussed. And it is very nice formatting that aligns really well with that email format. It even made sure that it was my name here at the bottom because the original draft did not. So let's actually jump back over here. I'm going to come back to the web version. If you want, you can quickly refresh this page just to see those newest updates. So created that draft. Now let's create a Teams post. And this one, I have a few more expectations that I'll read through while it's thinking. So I'm creating a Teams post. It's going to be a channel announcement. And I want to make sure we get a heading, that subtitle, and a really concise summary of the update. I do want the tone to be more conversational and positive as well as action oriented. And since we're doing an announcement, you can do a background there. So I'm going to have it create that background for me to create that visual interest and make sure that it draws the needed attention that it has. One of the elements here that I hope you take away is how specific I'm getting when it comes to that formatting. I didn't just say create a Teams heading. I said create a photorealistic Teams heading, and I want it to pair with this announcement. I did give it some specific dimensions because there is that understanding that it's going to be cut off in a little bit if it's not. I get varying results with that. I'll be completely transparent with that. So I might have to make some changes, but so far it did a really good job. That is something I can work with, and maybe I don't want the words in there. I can, of course, iterate and make changes, but I have that heading. I have a subtitle, And I have an encouraging post that all I have to do at this point is go copy and paste this and put it into that chat. Oh, it did come through. I spoke too soon. I'm so sorry, Copilot. It broke it down. It's cutting off some words, so I still will probably want to make some changes there. But that makes it pretty easy on me to update these three different main groups from the same content, very different audiences, and very different needs. All right, so that's the drafting component that I wanted to emphasize. Let's talk a little bit as well about what happens when you get that first draft. In your various tools, you are going to have options to use Copilot as a writing coach. In Outlook as well as Word, it is specifically called that, and there is a feature for coaching you. If you're in the regular chat, though, you can use that explicitly as a prompt and say, hey, give me feedback. What kind of sentiment am I giving off? What's the tone that I'm, getting at here? What this does is it gives you some insight into how your message is coming across and an opportunity to reevaluate if it might not be in line with what you originally thought. So let's actually come back to our experience here and we'll jump into this. So I'm going to close out that chat version and we still have Copilot features that will be here as I'm drafting. So if I read through this and it's not my favorite wording or anything like that, I should be able to, it usually shows up on the side, this little pencil icon. Those are your Copilot options to prompt or choose the pre-written options if that's faster. This Get Coaching will give you feedback on how this is coming across. Because I highlighted a specific section, it's only going to focus on that section. And when I hit coaching, it's going to come through and it should break it down into different groups for tone, reader sentiment, and the clarity. It gets really specific. So it's going to tell me what I said, and if it has a recommendation for a change, what I might want to adjust. The nice part here is that if you read through this and you agree with everything, you can actually hit apply all changes and Copilot will just update that section for you. So that is one way to do that. A similar option is available in Word if you're drafting a document. That will be there for you. And notice that here, it's giving me a preview. I said early on that you have control over everything that it does, and I want to make sure that you approve of what's going on. So now it's giving me that preview as to what my new email is going to look like to make sure that that is appropriate. You will get two options though. You can either replace what you have or insert it below so that you can pick and choose from both of those versions. I also want to point out that you are looking at version 2 of 2. So if you want to see what the original version was, it takes you back to this original space. Maybe it didn't apply it the way you wanted to, so we stay here and we make some manual updates. You have a number of different choices as you go, and you can keep making recommendations, keep adding those clarifications as you continue on, and you'll see every version that it comes up with for you before you decide to actually insert it. Once you insert and either replace or add to what you have, I will say this no longer is in that conversation history like your normal chats, but through the process before you add it in, you will see the variety that comes through. All right, so let's jump to a slightly different scenario here. Now, one thing that I do want to say as well, we started right off in drafting. We knew what we needed to create. Sometimes you're going to be creating new processes or new workflows, and you don't know exactly what that looks like. Copilot's a great brainstorming partner to say, hey, this is what we have today. This is what I'm envisioning. How do I bridge this gap? And what does that process look like? What's realistic? And you can challenge what it comes back with too. I've done this on a number of different occasions where it makes recommendations and I realize there's changes I want to make, or there is something it assumed that I want to adjust. So what we're going to do here is move on and say that we're implementing a new AI adoption program, since we're going to stick with the theme today. When you open a blank document, you should see a Copilot prompt text box above your first page. If you're opening something that already exists, let's say we do this emergency preparedness plan, it should actually give you a slightly different view, and you should get a summary at the top. So it's trying to anticipate what those needs are based off of where you're starting from. You will also see Copilot down here in the corner. This will give you some different options to chat, just like we did in Outlook. I didn't mean to close that. Let's come back to open a brand new document. And I'm going to say, hey, I want to create a one-page charter for launching an AI adoption program. Make sure to include the purpose, goals, success metrics, who the stakeholders are. And so I'm being really specific with what I need to be included here. But there's two things that are some of my favorite prompting elements to add in many scenarios. And that is to have Copilot in some way list any assumptions that it made. And this works really well when you're in a chat format. We'll see how it works here in Word. And I'm also saying, if you don't know the answer, you don't have to pretend you do, just insert a TBD placeholder. This is really helpful when it comes to improving that accuracy so that it doesn't feel the need to know everything and disappoint you. Now, in this scenario as well, I can still attach those documents. So again, that / should bring up my recent documents. We can upload from our device as well if it's not already saved to OneDrive or SharePoint. So you should be able to type in any of your keywords here. I'm going to have it just research, but if you pull from existing documentation, it will drastically improve the level of detail it can provide in its drafting. So in this case, I'm relying on it pulling from our internal information, anything that might be there, as well as its foundational knowledge. Now, even though I started that conversation up here, it's going to open my chat here on the side. I just want to point out, I still have that green shield check mark. You should see this whenever you're interacting with Copilot. So we have that protection. The other thing as well is if you're working with a variety of sensitivity labels within your organization, Copilot respects those. So if you reference something that's a higher sensitivity label, it will automatically match that highest level of reference so that your new content doesn't unintentionally expose something that you didn't mean to, purely off of that disconnect and new creation. So as it's pulling through here, we're starting to see some content come together on our page. Everything that's new is going to be highlighted in blue. So if you're working from an existing document, things that aren't affected or changed won't be highlighted, but the new pieces or the recommended rewrites and so forth are going to be highlighted in that. So let's take a look through here. It came up with a adoption charter, and it did list assumptions that were made. So one of the things it's commenting is that we are going to have all of this information and that we don't have a timeline. It couldn't find one in my resources because there isn't one. And so I will likely want to read through those first, because if any of those are off, I'm going to make adjustments right away. So as I scroll through here, we'll read through it, we'll view it, and if there's anything that, if I want to start over, I can just hit undo. If there's anything I want to change, I can come over here as well. Now, similar to Outlook, there is an option here for you to either make sure that you're only chatting or that it's allowing editing. By default, in my experience, it's allowing editing. So if you're having any trouble with that, see if that setting is there so that you can switch it. And if you don't want it to make changes to your document, it might be beneficial to switch to just chat only. But most of the time, it's going to give you a heads up before it adds anything. So as I come through here, I'm going to go ahead and hit done. And now we're going to leverage this a little bit more. So I'm not going to stop here. Drafting is great. I might like what I see, but I want to have it challenge me and elevate what I'm creating as well. So I'm going to come back over here to the chat and I'm going to have it challenge me a little bit. So same conversation, it has our same context over here. I'm going to put in, hey, act as an executive reviewer and identify any weaknesses, missing risks that aren't here, anything that's an unclear assumption. And I want it to tell me what could be improved. You can also do this if you're wanting feedback on the structure of your document, specific areas. If you want just a section included, go ahead and highlight that because this chat will use whatever open context you have. And that's true in any of your applications, whether that be Outlook and you have an email open, Excel and you have data that's being referenced. When you open Copilot directly in those applications, it's going to immediately have the existing content as a reference point. So now coming through here, it's giving me a number of different suggestions and an easy apply button if I want to use it. So I very much encourage you to challenge the things that you write and kind of come through. We can apply this as we see fit, and with, oversight, we want to stay in the loop the whole time. So feel free to kind of go through those. You can also look at all of them kind of at the same time as well to see if maybe a different resolution fixes an earlier problem. But if it's not relevant, we'll just discard it and it'll move on. So I have a couple different options here. This is option 2 of 2, so you do get that arrow. And these are a little bit more interactive. My biggest tip for you when you're working directly in these different applications is Copilot does honor the structure of your document. And what I mean by that is these styles help with the organization of a Word document. So if I were to come into our view up here at the top and open our navigational pane, I have easy navigation through this document based off of different headings and styles that I'm putting together. This was a default style, and so I didn't change anything, but if you did come in here, maybe you're working from an organizational template or you don't like this color, and so you come in here and you modify the heading to be something totally different, Copilot will follow those rules. I usually like to set those up before I start prompting Copilot because sometimes doing it afterwards doesn't fully come through the way I want it to. But when you put together the styles and the design elements, it's going to honor that. The same is true in, say, PowerPoint over here. If you start this conversation, say what you want to create, it's going to honor any of the templates you're working in. And recommendation with PowerPoint specifically, do make sure that you don't have overlapping themes in there because it can get mixed up and Copilot won't necessarily know what you prefer. So the cleaner that your structure is, the better Copilot will respond to it, and it will make it easier so you don't have to do as many edits at the end as well. All right, so that covers a lot of what I know we have time to chat through today, but I do want to offer some time here for questions, anything that we didn't cover you were hoping would be answered. And while you're, feel free to use the raise your hand or put those questions in the chat. But while you're thinking through that, I'll just share a couple final thoughts when it comes to effective prompting. I hope I kind of showed you some different ideas of what this can look like in real time. But effective prompts need to be really specific and really detailed. I'm not saying brain dump everything that's ever run through your mind, but when you use those full sentences, you're very explicit with the context and background around what you're trying to achieve, and you tell it a little bit more about the full format. Maybe you need certain types of things italicized. Maybe you need specific sections included. Or if you're putting together a task list rather than a bullet list, you want a table format. All of this is going to help Copilot have a better understanding of what success looks like for you. It's less effective when we're vague. If you use just a few words, kind of like my first prompt where I just said, hey, tell me the latest. it made some assumptions is what I wanted, and it might have missed some key things because it didn't know. So you can absolutely use some of those more simple prompts. Just know that as you get more experience and as you start to add those details in, your results are going to get better and better. I do see the question in here asking about the recording. So we are recording today's session. As you saw, the automatic link that comes through won't work for you. So don't let that frustrate you. We will be sending a follow-up after today's session so that if you're interested in that link or the presentation slides we have for today, you'll have access to that afterwards. So look for that email as in the next coming days. All right. So if you are still getting started as well, there is a ton of prompt inspiration when it comes to that prompt gallery. And I'll also highlight you can save your own prompts. Sometimes the prompt gallery just doesn't fit what you're needing to do. So if I come back to my web page up here, if I know that I want to do a similar prompt, I do a lot of Teams posts and only a small amount is going to be changing. In the conversation I had, if you scroll up to the message you sent to Copilot, hovering over it, you should see a little bookmark icon. This will allow you to create a title for that prompt. So I'll just call this a Teams channel post, and it's going to copy everything you had in there so that you can use that very easily again. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and you can view the prompt gallery pretty quickly up here. But let's start a new chat just to show you what getting there might look like. So the first thing I'll say is, as you start typing, there is a bit of memory that comes through, and this was a recent conversation I had. So it does pull it up in here and give me the option to add in a file. But that's not always something you're going to be able to rely on. So let's go to that prompt gallery. And instead of searching through based off of the type of task, I'm going to go to the Your Prompts section. And this is everything that I've saved that I might want to use again. The one that we just created is right here. So you can also see if you created it, or let's see if I have any from Microsoft. Looks like all of these are ones I created, but if you had saved it from Microsoft, something that was pre-drafted, it'll tell you that as well. So if I want to use this, it adds it directly in exactly as I saved it. And all I'll want to do at this point is add in the meeting I'm referencing. All right. So with that all being said, I will just kind of share that, again, if you take nothing else away, I hope it's that you have so many more opportunities other than just drafting with Copilot. Yes, that's a fantastic place to start, but use it to help analyze and critique and elevate what you have. Now, if anyone is interested, we do help a lot of organizations. I won't spend too much time on this, but if you are looking for any training or support, please feel free to reach out to us if you're launching Copilot or any of these AI tools and you want that assistance in creating the success for others in your organization. Please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to have that conversation and see how we can help you. But otherwise, I will save the rest of the time that we have here for any additional questions. I'll put those links here in the chat as well. And always happy to hear from you if there's anything else that we at Planet can do for you. So thank you all for taking the time today. I'll take a look here at the chat for any additional questions, but otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic day.